Hey everyone, welcome back to Sip and Talk. I'm Joe.
And hey there, I'm Sunny.
So Sunny, we've been hearing a lot lately, especially from listeners over in Taiwan. They're asking us to talk about this thing, this ERDI idea, doubting America.
Right, and the related concept, the fear that the U.S. might, abandon Taiwan.
Exactly. It sounds like it's a really big discussion happening there.
It definitely is. And, it's not something that has popped up overnight. This skepticism, this worry about abandonment, it's really taken hold more in recent years.
Why is that, do you think? What's driving it?
Well, a big factor, and our sources really point this out, is China's cognitive warfare.
Ah, right.
Yeah, it's a pretty deliberate push to sow doubt, to undermine trust between Taiwan and the U.S., create divisions. It's like this constant background noise trying to weaken that relationship.
I remember after the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021, that seemed to get brought up a lot. Jumped on as a prime example. See, the U.S. leaves its partners behind.
Oh.
That narrative was pushed hard.
Okay.
But it's not just China's influence, though that's significant. You also have internal factors within Taiwan.
Like what?
Well, just the basic insecurity of living under a constant threat from China.
All right.
Right? And internal political disagreements, too. Plus, uncertainty surrounding U.S. policy itself.
You mean the whole America First thing?
Yeah, that and specifically the potential for Donald Trump's return. His, let's say, past reluctance to give a clear yes on defending Taiwan definitely adds to the anxiety for some people.
Okay, so let's dig into this. It feels kind of uncomfortable, but one of our sources poses this question almost like a thought experiment.
Right.
If you were the U.S. putting America first, how could you possibly convince yourself that abandoning Taiwan is actually a good idea? What are the supposed benefits?
Yeah, it's a stark way to frame it. And if you really try to put on that purely transactional hat, looking at the potential upsides, well, economically, maybe you could argue for deals with China.
How so?
Like perhaps dropping tariffs on U.S. goods, getting better access to the Chinese market, maybe even hoping it eases pressure on U.S. debt, which, was a big focus for Trump. We even saw some temporary tariff de-escalation talks in 2025.
So a purely kind of dollars and cents calculation?
Potentially, yeah, though heavily debatable if it would even work out that way. Then there's the geopolitical angle.
Using Taiwan as a bargaining chip, you mean?
Sort of.
Yeah.
Could the U.S. trade Taiwan, essentially, for China's help on other issues, like North Korea or Iran sanctions, or maybe even stabilizing global supply chains?
Wow.
Trump's past comments about, unity and peace being beneficial could be interpreted by some, perhaps cynically, as hinting at that kind of quid pro quo thinking.
That sounds incredibly cynical.
It does. And then there's the domestic politics angle. Could a president sell abandoning Taiwan as a win at home?
How? By saying we're avoiding a war.
Exactly. Avoid a costly foreign war, focus on the economic benefits of a China deal, appeal to voters who want the U.S. to focus inward. That could be the pitch.
So that source also lists ways the U.S. might try to, justify this to itself, right? What were those?
Yeah, some potential self-justifications, like arguing Taiwan isn't technically a core U.S. interest, not like protecting the U.S. homeland, pointing out it's not a formal treaty ally like Japan or South Korea. That distinction matters in some arguments.
Which must sound pretty scary if you're in Taiwan.
Absolutely. Or raising the fear of war with a nuclear power. Again, pointing to Afghanistan as maybe a precedent for cutting losses, being pragmatic.
Right.
There's even mention of this idea of Finlandization, letting Taiwan keep economic ties, but without any U.S. military shield.
So just leave them defensively isolated.
Essentially.
Yeah.
And the final one is always, we need to focus resources here at home. Infrastructure, healthcare, education. Not pour money into defending somewhere far away.
Okay, so that covers the potential, maybe twisted logic for abandoning Taiwan. But let's be real, the downsides seem massive. What are the strategic costs?
Oh, they are huge. And this is where the other source, analyzing U.S.-Taiwan relations amid skepticism, really lays it out from a longer-term view. First off, U.S. dominance in the Asia-Pacific, gone or severely damaged.
Not so.
Taiwan is vital to that first island chain. If the U.S. walks away, that chain is broken. Allies like Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, they'd immediately question U.S. reliability. It would send shockwaves.
So a crisis of confidence in U.S. commitments.
A massive one. You'd see a global credibility crisis, potentially leading to diplomatic isolation as countries hedge their bets. And think about U.S. bases in the region, like Guam. Suddenly much more vulnerable.
Okay, that's huge geopolitically. What about economically?
Semiconductors. It would be catastrophic. Taiwan, specifically TSMC, makes something like over 90% of the world's most advanced chips.
The ones in everything. Phones, computers, cars, military tech.
Everything. The U.S. is trying to build up its own chip-making, sure, but it's nowhere near replacing Taiwan's output, especially not quickly. Losing that supply chain controlled by a friendly partner. Devastating.
So, global economic chaos on top of the strategic nightmare.
Pretty much. And finally, abandoning Taiwan doesn't just, appease China. It empowers them massively.
They wouldn't see it as a peace offering.
Unlikely. Most analysis suggests they'd see it as proof of U.S. decline, making them more aggressive, not less. They'd feel emboldened to push their claims elsewhere.
And the news source reinforces all this.
Absolutely. It talks about the first island chain collapsing, America's promise being broken, brand damage, immediate semiconductor chaos, with China potentially controlling that vital tech.
Right.
Plus the loss of legitimacy for democratic values and the fact that China's ambitions probably don't end with Taiwan. They have eyes on the South China Sea, East China Sea, maybe beyond.
It paints a really, really bleak picture of the consequences.
It does. But it's also important to remember, a U.S. president couldn't just decide this on their own.
Ah, right. Checks and balances. Congress.
Exactly. Congress has a long, long history of supporting Taiwan. Think about the Taiwan Relations Act. That carries weight.
So there'd be huge pushback.
Almost certainly. Significant bipartisan opposition. You'd see a massive political fight domestically. Plus, just the sheer strategic and economic value of Taiwan.
The chips, the location.
Right. It arguably outweighs any potential short-term gain from some deal with China. You even hear AIT officials publicly reaffirming the commitment.
And that source also suggested that just the U.S. desire to, remain a global superpower would probably prevent this kind of move.
That's the argument, yeah. That long-term strategic thinking should hopefully prevail over short-term transactional ideas.
Okay, so if the arguments against abandoning Taiwan are so strong and there are checks and balances, why does this doubt still persist so much in Taiwan? Our notes mentioned East section diving into this.
Yeah, this is crucial. Why does the skepticism stick around? A big part is that ongoing Chinese cognitive warfare we mentioned earlier.
It's just that effective.
Well, it's persistent, systematic, and well-funded. We're talking billions spent globally. Disinformation spread through social media, fake news outlets, amplifying any narrative that makes the U.S. look unreliable, using things like the Afghanistan withdrawal constantly.
Like a steady drip of doubt.
Exactly. Then you have Taiwan's own inherent sense of insecurity. Living next to a giant, often hostile neighbor, a history of diplomatic isolation, it naturally breeds some anxiety about relying on a distant ally.
Past events probably linger too, like the U.S. switching recognition in '79.
For sure, historical memory plays a role. And then, again, the uncertainty caused by America First rhetoric.
Trump's transactional style.
Yeah, and just ambiguous statements. When certain conservative figures in the U.S. publicly question defending Taiwan, those clips get picked up and spread like wildfire in Taiwan, fueling the doubt.
And within Taiwan itself, people don't all agree, right?
No, definitely not. Different political groups have different levels of trust in the U.S. They're sometimes grumbling about U.S. arms sales. Are they the right weapons? Are they too expensive? Is the U.S. demanding Taiwan spend more on defense?
Okay.
Plus, just the modern information environment. It's chaotic. Simple narratives like, America only cares about itself, are easy to spread on social media, easier sometimes than explaining complex geopolitics.
And fear plays a part, I imagine.
Absolutely. Constant military threats, like the big Chinese exercises in 2024, increase fear and uncertainty, which can make people more susceptible to believing negative narratives or rumors. Cognitive biases kick in.
Is there also just a general distrust of big powers?
That can be part of it too, yeah. A feeling that maybe U.S. support is just about containing China, not really about Taiwan itself. And Taiwan's unique history of isolation might foster a kind of ingrained pessimism about foreign help.
So the doubt persists because China keeps pushing, because of inherent anxieties, because of U.S. ambiguity sometimes.
Because of internal divisions, the messy info landscape, psychological factors, and maybe even the U.S. policy of strategic ambiguity itself.
Yeah.
Which leaves room for interpretation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And finally, there's the challenge for Taiwan itself in countering all this effectively. It takes resources, public awareness, better media literacy education across the board.
Wow. So it really is a tangled web. Geopolitics, economics, domestic politics in 2 countries, history, psychology, and deliberate disinformation campaigns.
It truly is. And the bottom line seems to be that while you could construct a very narrow, short-term argument for why the U.S. might consider abandoning Taiwan.
But the long-term costs, strategic, economic, moral, they just seem overwhelmingly negative.
Exactly. Taiwan's role, especially with semiconductors and regional security, is just too important to casually dismiss.
Okay. This has been, well, a really comprehensive look at a complex issue. So thinking about everything we've discussed, the shaky potential benefits for the U.S., the huge costs, all those reasons, the doubt persists. It leaves you wondering, doesn't it? What are the best ways really for Taiwan to counter this How can they shore up confidence and strengthen their own position, considering all these different pressures?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And likely involves action on many fronts: defense, diplomacy, communication, building internal resilience. It's definitely something for our listeners, especially those in Taiwan, to think deeply about.
Absolutely. A lot to chew on there. Well, if you found this deep dive useful, make sure you're subscribed to Sip and Talk. And hey, maybe check out our friend Micky's YouTube channel while you're at it.
Always worth a look.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll catch you next time.